So in this section, we're talking about development, and we have an entire class on it. So this is very much a cursory overview, but I developed a little tool to give you sort of an idea of a back of the napkin way of evaluating projects. If you were a developer, so you filter through a whole host of options that are presented to you along the way. And what this does is it gives you a way of considering if a project as a first cut is even a viable consideration. Now we're going to handle this maybe a little bit differently than what we have in the past. So I've uploaded the template for this. I'm going to go rather slow. The idea being that it gives you an opportunity to work on it with me. I encourage you to kind of pause and, generate the answers as I go, because it's really the only good way for you to kind of get a handle of it. If I just explained it, you'd never touch it and it'd just lay there and be useless. In reality, I can't take credit for developing the concept of this. The way it's laid out and the tools that I use to answer the question are original to me. It's referred to as the front door, back door approach to deciding on development. Why do they call it front door, back door approach? Well, first of all, if you look at it, I'm on what is referred to as the market-driven page. Basically, what I'm getting at is, and I'm going to toggle around, then I'll settle in real quick. What I'm getting at is, I have information from the market. So this is going to be information based on what the market rents are likely to be on a particular project that we're going to undertake, and expenses, etc. And I'm filtering down, and I'll get into the details here in a minute. And I'm filtering down to figure out what the anticipated budget would be based on market-driven rents as the starting point. And we'll call that the market-driven. You can call it the front door if you want. Now let's go to the back door, or the cost-driven approach. In the cost-driven story, what we're going to do is say, all right, I know what this thing's going to cost me because I have the engineer that can price out all the hard costs. I have accounting to give me the soft costs. And I know what they're asking for the land. And so if I take it from that position, from the cost perspective, then work my way to the bottom and basically ask the question, can the market bear the rent that I need based on what the original cost is going to be? And so that's why it's looking at it from a front and a back perspective. All right, so because we're familiar with this direction, because it starts with our basic pro forma, we're going to begin with the market approach. And again, I'm going to go relatively slow. You can find the template on Blackboard. It says front door, back door students. And fill it in as we go. And I'll try not to get too big a hurry, and of course you can always pause it along the way. So here's some assumptions that we're going to base this analysis on, or this back of the napkin test on. It says PGI is $300,000, and what that's based on is a multifamily property that we're considering constructing that would contain 50 units, and the market-derived rents are $500 per unit. For the time being, just for the case of making it simple to do the work, we're going to assume an annual payment on debt instead of monthly payments, just to cut down some of the details, okay? We called the financial institution. The financial institution currently requires a DCR, a debt coverage ratio, of 125 or 1.25, right? And that means that NOI is going to be 125% of our annual debt service. The loan-to-value ratio that the financial institution is willing to give us is 75%. Our required cash-on-cash return is 17%. So that's the money that we require on a first-year cash flow based on the amount of money that we're going to invest in this project. It has a 10-year hold. The mortgage interest rate is 9.5%. The term is 25 years. This guy is going to be handled like a regular old amortizing mortgage. We have property taxes at $4,000. We're going to estimate vacancy at 5%, and we calculate some operating expenses at $47,750. All right, so there's the assumptions. Well, let's start. Just to give you a brief, before I go all the way down, I'm going to come up with NOI. And then I'm going to split it up. So this side is the equity side, and this side is the debt side. And then I'm going to bring the two back together at the end. So if you look at it, it looks a bit like a four-sided sideways square, as it were. Okay. So there's the $300,000, of course. That's our PGI. There's our vacancy and credit loss. That's the 5%. Again, don't hesitate to pause this thing and run it out yourself. That way you'll be most comfortable with how to use it. It comes in handy. Students prior to you have actually employed this or something similar to this in their own projects. So we're going to take vacancy and credit loss away, and we end up with our EGI. We have our expense estimate, the $47,750, and you and I have property taxes. And for the time being, that's the only expenses that we're including. And again, it's just for illustration. You and I might add some other things, CapEx, etc., insurance, and so forth. Take those expenses away from EGI, and we're left with $233,250. $233,250. All right. So I need to figure out how to split these up. It says the debt coverage ratio needs to be 125, right? So that means I need to figure out of this NOI, what portion of it can be comprised of debt. And that's what I'm doing right here. Here's the formula cell. So I'm going to take this F10, or the 233,250 NOI, and I'm going to divide it by the 125. The 125 then suggests that we can afford $187,000 annually in debt service. So if we take the 186.6 away from the 223,250 of NOI, we're left with the 46,650, which is before tax cash throw off. So that's the cash to the equity side, right? So we've taken the 233 and we've parsed it between debt and equity. Okay? So I'll finish this side real quick, the equity side. You'll recall the required cash-on-cash return for this particular project is pegged at 17%. So that's what we decided we need. If we're going to receive $46,650 in our first year cash throw-off, and we require 17% return, then our justified investment is $274,400. That is the investment that you and I are willing to make from the equity side. Now let's go back over and finish debt. I'm going to open this up this way a little bit. So we had the 186.6. That's basically our annual debt service. Now remember I said we're just going to go with annual payments for a moment. So I need to convert that to the justified mortgage investment, or how much I'm able to borrow, right? If I'm paying $187,000 a year at, as you can recall, at 9.5% on a 25-year term, well, what does that equate to in terms of the present value? And one way to find that out is to calculate this thing known as an annualized mortgage constant. And you'll see that the annualized mortgage constant in this particular case is 10.60. The formula for the mortgage constant is right here. It has interest in the numerator. In the parens, we have 1 minus this grouping here, a number of ones. The ones don't change, okay? The only thing that you incorporate is the N, so the number of payments. And since it's annual in this case, it's 25. And I, and again, in this case, it's 9.5%, as you can see. That gives us this 10.6%. What is that 10.6%? It's actually telling you that your mortgage payments represent 10.6% of the amount that you're able to borrow. So I take the 10.6% and I put it in the denominator and divide the 186 by it. and I end up with this 1,761,052. And that's how much I can borrow from the bank based on the constraints that they gave us of 25 years, 9.5%, and 125% DCR. Okay, so now we know how much the bank will lend us. The 1,761. And we know how much we're willing to invest. The 274.4. Add those two together, and that's the project investment, right? Right now, that's the two entities that are involved, equity and debt. So based on the market, project investment is going to be required of 2035464. We need to buy the land, and we're going to impose a 20% total impact on it. It's just kind of a rule of thumb that you have a 5-fold total investment. 20% of it, that total investment, is your land. Just as an aside, something to think about. That's one of the reasons why in a place like Goochland County or Western Hanover, if you're from the area, that's why all the houses are so large when they're built new, because both of those counties have lot size requirements, right? So in Western Hanover, for example, you have a 10-acre minimum, right? So if you have a 10-acre minimum and you're charged $20,000 an acre, you got $200,000 in land. You're going to have to build a pretty good sized house in order to get the return you need as the builder. And so the rule of thumb is typically 20% of the total price is in the dirt. So if you take the dirt out of the total project, the 1.628 is our construction budget for this particular project. Again, from the perspective of the market. If this is the actual market, it's going to take this much to build this property to justify the quality and capacity to generate the income. Now, we'll take a look at the cost-driven approach, or the backdoor direction. So, as we get going here, remembering that we're going to start from the construction cost and the total capital budget required based on our knowledge of what it takes to build this thing. Okay? All right, one of the elements that's added or incorporated into this particular direction is the cost of land. The current asking price of the land is this $410. Okay? We need a cost to construct as well. And our building engineer has given us an estimate of $30,000 per unit. And again, there's 50 units. So we got 410 in the land and the 1.5 in the hard costs. Through our experience, we've identified a general consensus that 5% of those hard costs typically are required for soft costs. Add those three components up: land, hard, and soft costs, and we have a budget that's just under $2 million. Now, you'll recall the bank said the allowable LTV, or LTC in this case, loan to cost, is 75%. So 75% of the total budget can be borrowed. 25% of it must be comprised of equity. There's the budget. 75% of that budget is the 1,488. 25% of it is the 496. Staying on the equity side, we're going to incorporate that 17% cash throw-off again. We need a 70% return, or cash-on-cash return. So the throw-off generated out of that 17% with a $496,000 investment indicates that we need $84,000 a year in income. Back over to the debt side, at 1.5, I'll call it, we already calculated the mortgage constant at 10.6. Our annual debt service under that scenario then would be $158,000. Just like before, we're doing the same sort of thing where we're breaking the budget apart. On the market side, we broke the NOI apart. We're breaking the budget apart between equity and debt. We're going to figure out what the annual composition of that is, and we're adding them back together. And what that result is NOI. Okay, now if you look at this, we're going upside down, right? So we're starting at NOI, and we're going to end at PGI. It's fairly straightforward and simple, except for one little calculation you got to look at. And I'll show you in a second. So net operating income is the sum of those two. You and I were already given the operating expenses. We were already given the property taxes. We utilized the same numbers. We have effective gross income then of $293,860 by adding these three figures together. Now I need to calculate vacancy and collection loss. Well, of course, it's kind of inverse, right? It's backwards. So here's the formula. I'll go through it with you. So I have effective gross income divided by 0.95, as you can see. So 1 minus the vacancy. And you end up with you end up with a number that's larger than this. How much larger than this? Take it away. And the answer is this 15.5. So I've divided this thing by 0.95, and it grew to the 293,860 plus the 15,466, or this number right here, 309. If it's confusing, play around with it, and you'll find out how it plays out. So 293 plus the 15.5 gives us a potential gross income of 309,326. 309,326 divided by the total number of units and the total number of months. So this is months units. Gives me an estimated required rent of $516. So you'll recall that the market indicated that the market rent could be $500. When we approach this question from the cost to construct standpoint, we end up with a value of $516, suggesting that in order to make this deal work and to generate our cash on cash return and to cover the financial institution's 9.5%, we need to charge rents of $516. Now, at the end of the day, that's higher, right, than the market. So if you're risk averse, you might say, no, thank you, I'm uninterested. Alternatively, it's only $16. Maybe we can live with 16%. And that gets us pretty close, as you can see. Maybe the 9.5 is overstated, and that interest rate will change to 9.25 possibly, but between now and the time the deal closes. Let's see what happens if we do this. So if we took 25 basis points off our loan, and we took 1% off our cash return, we're at 501. We actually are basically right there at the market. I'm going to go back so that it's consistent. Alternatively, another question you might ask is, all right, so the market says $500 for rent. Does that include current existing comparable properties in the area? And so the question I'm asking is, if we build a brand new place, will we be able to command a $15 premium, $16 in this case, of course, a $15 premium simply because of the fact that it's new? Now, those questions can't be answered with this simple little front door, back door calculation. But what it does do, as you can see, is it gives you a lot of really nice information in a simple, short package that doesn't take a great deal of time or energy to put together. I'm hoping you'll take the time to play through with it and work it out and see how all those things work. Maybe make some adjustments along the way in your numbers. See if you can get a place where they match. And then quite possibly begin to incorporate this into projects that you're looking at or considering on your own. Well, good luck with that. And until next time, take care.